Welcome to the Gray Range Podcast. My name is David Rousseau. We're going to explore the poetry of how we live, how we learn, and how we find our way along this strange path we call life. If you are curious about people, their stories, and all things savage and wonderful, join me on the Gray Range.
Are your kids going to watch this? We shouldn't swear, eh?
They probably will. They sent me a message earlier wishing me good luck because they help out quite a bit.
Yeah?
They're 5 and 7 now, and even since my oldest daughter, when I started this about 3 years ago,
Okay.
she was all hands on deck.
Yeah.
She's like, "Daddy, I want to come help you make holsters." I'm like, "All right." My youngest daughter didn't care. Like, I have hundreds of pictures on my phone from day one of me helping with 2 little blonde girls. And we cut a deal for every holster I sell. They get a paper money and a coin. So they get $7 for every holster I sell.
Oh, wow.
And I told a couple people that, like, here's an extra 20. This is for the girls. I'm like, cool. Thanks.
Sweet.
It's college fund.
The definition of family business.
Yeah. But, like, when's too early to get tools in your kids' hands?
Never.
Exactly.
And to get them involved in things is priceless, right?
Well, and it's a break for the wife, too.
Yeah.
She can be like, I need half an hour. Give me 45 minutes, or she'll go out riding the horse.
Yeah.
I'm like, girls' garage, we got holsters to make. Like, solid.
It's time to go to work now.
Let's go.
All right.
Sweet.
So,
Well,
cheers, fellas.
welcome.
Cheers. Thank you.
Another episode of the Gray Range Podcast.
Brought to you by Coors.
Yeah.
I wish.
Come on, Coors, just sponsor us. Throw us a bone.
One day.
Maybe I can get them to sponsor us like I got stickers out of Vortex. Because Vortex doesn't put stickers in their boxes.
Ooh.
So I bought a couple of decent scopes. Because they got really nice scopes. So, and I was like, man, I don't get any stickers from Vortex. So I went on social media. And I was like, I think it was Twitter at the time. And I was like, at Vortex. I'm like, what the hell? Where's my stickers? And they're like, you've got Vortex USA. You want to, and I got a DM from Vortex USA saying, email this person, Vortex Canada. And,
Is it Leighton?
I have no idea. This was years ago.
I know the rep, but
Yeah. And I was like, so I sent them like a screenshot of my tweet. And I'm like, what the hell? Like every other gear company, like just, it's like raining stickers, right? I'm like, why can't I get stickers?
Yeah.
They said, send us your address. And they sent me a whole shitload of stickers.
nice.
And then I just recently was like talking to Vortex on X, and I'm like, I love because they're kind of catching on in the U.S. quite a bit in the consumer market, and their higher grade stuff is really, really good. And I was like, yeah, I love your guys' stuff. Too bad I have to shame you on social media to get stickers. And she replied, one of them replied back saying like, or you could just ask nicely. I was like, well, I could, but where's the fun in that, right?
Yeah, they're pretty awesome. They're easy to deal with, man.
Oh, yeah, I've had some really good customer service from them. I've had to use their warranty a couple of times.
Yeah, me too.
And, nothing but total replacements and really good stuff. But
Yeah, I went through a very similar experience with them. I was like, hey, I need some stuff from you guys. And like, sure, give us your address. And now every year I get a catalog, and I get a package from them.
nice.
Here's your stickers, and here's your catalog for this year.
That's very cool.
And yeah, I've done that. I've sent binoculars back that I had sitting shotgun in the truck for years, and they just rattled apart.
Yep.
But you know the roads we drive up here and how much we drive up here.
All washboard.
Yeah, exactly. And I live on gravel. So like I get loaners from Dodge, and I bring them back like, what did you do to this thing? Like, just drove home and back.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like I've even watched it once before it came back to you guys.
Yeah.
I did it yesterday, and they're like, all right, we'll just deal with it.
Your daily commute is what most people's version of off-roading is.
Well, and they're great because I think I've even mentioned it to you. I sent them a red dot once, and they're like, these things don't exist anymore. Here's the new one.
Yeah, they'll always upgrade.
They give you a form to fill out
like that.
for technical reasons, but
Yeah, I had one of their red dots. The emitter inside actually came loose on like the first course of fire. I put it on one of my 5.56 ARs. I think it was like a 10.5 or something like that LMT, and literally like 4 or 5 rounds in, like bang, 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 bang. All of a sudden, my dot's gone. I'm like, what happened? And then back to the behind the bench, start looking at it, and I'm like, okay, maybe it's the battery. Start like, nope. You can shake it around and see the little laser bouncing around inside. I'm like,
they had some initial problems like in the early days, but they did a good job of correcting it all and backing it up. Like I remember,
absolutely,
it was years ago, and I had this little 708, which I still hunt with. I still have the rifle, and Vortex was brand new, and this was back when they had across the counter warranty. Like that's really how they broke into the market. And I remember I had a scope on there, and I blew it up on a little 708. Like I took a shot, boom, and then I'm like, what the hell? I look through and it's like blurry, like walleye vision, kind of crazy. And I shake my rifle and it hears tuk, 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 like hear the lens rattling around in there. So I go into the shop and I, across the counter, they give me a brand new one, and I go out and I blew that one up too. I'm like, what the fuck? So I go into the shop and they're at the time, I won't say which shop, but they're putting together this high-end package for this guy, and there's a Vortex scope being put on it. And I walk in there with this busted Vortex, and I'm like, hey, man, like, this thing's fucked. They're like, oh, yeah, we'll just give you a new one. I was like, no, I don't want one of those.
Yeah.
I was like, give me a loophole, and can I just have credit towards it? Like, and I was fully prepared to make a scene because I was a young asshole back in the day. Probably not much has changed. But
we've all gone through that.
They're like,
though.
Arm around the shoulder. Yeah, whatever you want, real quietly. Like, just pick something out, and we'll happily look after you. But so I shied away from the brand for a few years, just because it was like, all the bulletproof warranty in the world doesn't fucking matter when you're 200 kilometers in the middle of nowhere on the hunt of a lifetime and your scope doesn't work.
Exactly.
But they did a good job of like always looking after their customers, and they brought it up to the point where, I mean, their stuff is pretty rock solid now. I mean, now that I'm in the industry, we see the odd thing, but not that much. Their stuff's pretty good. So
yeah, they're newer stuff. I've got some of their kind of mid to high end stuff on like the 6.5, like precision builds and stuff like that. And it's stellar, fantastic glass.
One of the things that they've always done a good job on lately anyways, is certainly the last quite a few years, they always have something in a metric option in MRAD. Like there's so many like Zeiss, like fuck, get your act together. Give us metric scopes and I'd run more Zeiss, but like I want to shoot in mils.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to shoot in MOA anymore. Like what's
once you learn the math,
yeah,
right?
once you start shooting metric, you never go back. So
yeah, the only thing the Americans like really adopted heavily with the metric system is anything related to firearms.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. You'll listen to like U.S. military stuff, and even guys like Tim Kennedy, and they'll drop a meters every once in a while, and you're like, really? Like, you guys are pretty strict on.
No, it's NATO, right? Like all the military stuff's in metric. But I should point out this podcast is not sponsored by Vortex yet.
Well, we started off shit talking them, so probably not.
Right? They're like, fuck those guys.
But having their like. Being able to send something back and they just send you a brand new one. Like they can't have tech support. They can't have guys like us taking apart scopes and trying to fix them.
No.
It does not exist.
And they probably do on their highest end stuff.
Sure. When it's a $5,000 piece of glass, you might have to.
Yeah, exactly.
But what are their high-end scopes costing them versus what we're paying for them?
Yeah, well, I'm assuming that they're going to want to look in there and find out what's wrong. Yeah, right? Like why did that seal fail?
Yeah, because they don't want to send another one out the door.
Why
if
is this thing fogging up on my $10,000 elk hunt? Right,
sure.
Like it shouldn't be doing that.
I think the higher end, like their razor line's very good, and their Vipers are pretty solid, and the rest of it. I mean, there's a place for it. I don't. Their Diamondback line is kind of like. Fuck, this is turning into a full-on Vortex product discussion.
with your loopholed hat on.
with my loopholed hat on. Yeah, that's another whole story how I got this hat.
Just stab a motherfucker for it.
No, actually. Yeah, fuck it, I'll tell you. Because I don't think anyone from Vortex is going to watch this anyways. But
if they do, they're going to love it. All this product talk.
I'm in NBS, or Nation's Best Sport. I'm in Fort Worth, Texas, and I walk into the Loophole booth, and I'm wearing a fucking Vortex hat. And my rep's name is Derek Rambo.
No shit.
Yeah, and Rambo's like, he's like, what the fuck are you doing wearing that hat in here? And I'm like, I don't know. I was like, well, give me yours. He's like, well, you got to throw that one in the fucking garbage then. And I was like, okay. So I like fucking dropped it into the trash and I made him give me his hat. So this is actually Rambo's hat. So I was like, whatever, man.
There you go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great
He
story.
remembered me because we went back like a year later and and I was wearing the same hat and he's like, he kind of gave me the nod later. He's like, that's a good looking fucking hat. He says, I was like, okay.
Awesome. So Preston.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, man.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it.
No, I've listened to a bunch of these, most of them. So
no, that's really cool, man. Whenever I meet somebody who's listened to any of these things, I'm both flattered and shocked and a little disturbed.
No.
Yes, I'm like,
well,
yeah.
Like I was telling Lucas, like after I think I listened to the first one, I saw you in a grocery store and ambushed you. It's like, dude, like we met once, I think, in your garage.
Yeah.
I came to your house once training when you were still training before your training.
Yeah, that's where we met for sure. I remember that.
Yeah. And then it's just like, I listen to so many podcasts because I drive hours a day. You know, you're working 10 hours a day, Alberta oil field stuff. Like it's podcasts are.
I'm the same way. I work long hours alone in the control room. It's just like always got one or two kind of keyed up at all times.
Yeah. Like it used to just be music and then it was satellite radio. And then like I had an old apprentice who was like, yeah, man, he's like, the internet's taking over. Like it's going to take away cable TV. I'm like, no, there's no way. Yep. Like we're never going to just be reliant on the internet. Meanwhile, 10 years later, I'm eating my words. Like I don't watch TV. We don't have TV. Everything's you subscribe to something, and I don't listen to radio. My wife has radio in her truck. She'll still listen to local radio, but like unless it's I get it from the gun counter or get it from someone at work, I have no idea what's going on locally. So when this happened, it's like there's local podcasts, like people that are in our community. You've had Mike on, Mike Davidson.
Yeah.
He's my neighbor. Our kids ride the school bus together. And like Lane. Yeah. Like I love the dude. I've been training with him for 3 years now. Yeah. And it's just like, oh, these are people I know.
Yeah, and that was kind of the impetus behind the podcast was being a writer and looking at all these story ideas. I was just kind of like, part of when you're generating a story is character generation. Mm-hmm. And you're always kind of stealing from people you know or people you've met to kind of make your people colorful. And as I was trying to flesh out these story ideas and character ideas, I was like, not that it's dumb, but I'm like, why wouldn't I just get people to talk about themselves? Instead of making up somebody based on this person and this person's personality and this person's life experiences, why wouldn't I just get somebody to tell me about their life experiences and make it that much more honest?
Yeah.
And I've had this really, really, really good fortune to meet some really cool people, through martial arts, through the shooting community, through just living up here and doing cool stuff. I've met some really, really interesting people. I was like, well, that's a place to start anyway.
Yeah.
Right. And now I'm a weird online stalker sending people I've never met messages online being like, hey, want to be on my podcast? I have like a boilerplate email now that I send people.
Do you want to hang out in my basement?
Yeah. I want to come hang out in my basement with my buddy who works in the gun store.
Yeah. What are all those freezers for? Well, we're not that weird.
One of them is for meat. So
yeah. They usually are. I think we have 3 deep freezers right now. It's
for sure.
Wife's like, are you going to get any tags this year? Because the freezer's already full. It's like, do we need a 4th deep freeze? Like,
maybe. Okay.
Yeah, maybe. But we have the luxury. Her aunt and uncle raise cattle. So like, hey, do you want half a cow? You're like, all right, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
yes, I do.
Not a bad
all of our vegetables. Like we just last weekend, we went and got like 150 pounds of potatoes. And this was a shit year for potatoes because we didn't get any rain. I think last year we got between 500 and 600 pounds of potatoes. Like, okay, now how do we keep these all winter?
Yeah, that's a challenge.
We just get them from our neighbor. Yeah. Like, if you guys are going to come out and help us pick, help us plant and pull weeds throughout the year, and then we'll come and we'll harvest and, take it the morning. We'll have it done in 4 or 5 hours with 8 of us out there. And you guys can take your part. We're like, yeah, sure. You come home with 500 pounds of potatoes. You're like, okay, well, there's only 4 of us, and these are only going to last so many months.
Yeah,
I guess we're eating potatoes.
Yeah,
6 out of 7 days a week.
Yeah, we grow a few. We don't eat that many potatoes. Maybe like a once a week thing, maybe less. But generally, what I can grow in like half of one of my garden beds on a good year is about what it will eat in like the 3 coldest months of winter.
Yeah.
Like we won't have to buy potatoes for a while.
Yeah.
And then mostly what I grow is the other stuff that just keeps, like root vegetables, like beets and carrots and all that kind of stuff. Because the rest of the leafy green stuff you can buy in the store, and if not, then I can live without it.
Yeah.
But
I fucking love potatoes, man. Meat and potatoes, that's my jam.
Yeah. Well, we do beets and carrots and stuff too, and I'm not a huge fan. But the wife even takes like beet greens and she puts them in smoothies and all that.
We eat the whole thing.
But like to get 3 full freezers of vegetables is not uncommon. And my wife's got a decent sized garden, and it's a lot of work.
Yep.
But even the other night, she's like, hey, all the tomatoes got to come out of the greenhouse because it's going to start getting cold. And I'm not covering vegetables for the next 2 weeks until it might get warm enough again. And I built this giant greenhouse a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I have my one jalapeno pepper plant in there that I get. You know, the dogs will run by and knock a pepper off. And you're like, okay, that one's mine. I'm eating that this morning for breakfast or
nice
having it with steak. Or
I get all my peppers from this guy.
Oh, yeah.
I grow the peppers.
Yeah, and the hot bastard salsa that comes out of that greenhouse every fall is...
it's going to be good this year, man.
Yeah. We got a family friend who's from El Salvador, and she loves spicy food. Like, anything that I would consider, like, too spicy, she's like, oh, that's perfect. Yeah. And she loves your salsa.
Nice, yeah.
It's like, I try and get an extra jar from me every year just to give to her for Christmas.
I got some extras if you need some, because I've still got, I've got some surplus. And I have a bunch
in my old age, I just can't handle the heat as much anymore.
Yeah. Well, so now what I'm doing is like I'm not going to make the salsa as hot this year. I got a bunch of habanero, and I'm not going to. I won't put that much in there. Like mostly, it was a couple of years ago I did it, and the boy fucking loves it. So I'll make it for him anyway. But I smoke the peppers.
Oh yeah,
with mesquite. I throw them in the smoker for I don't know whatever it takes, like 3 or 4 hours. And then I finish them in the dehydrator. Because I just got a shitty little smoker. Like you can't, if I leave them in there too long, they'll just fucking burn.
Yeah.
So I smoke them in there for like maybe 3 hours, and then I finish them in the dehydrator and then grind it. Oh my God, is it ever good?
Yeah.
It's homemade chipotle.
Yeah.
But it's like habanero chipotle. So it's got some
kick.
Yeah, it's got some kick.
Beautiful.
So you can put it on everything.
Yeah.
Right on. And Preston, you own a company called Marshall Controls.
That's correct. Yeah, started it probably about 3 years ago now.
How did that come about? Was that just on a whim, or did you see a need, or
it was surely out of necessity? At the time, I owned one pistol. It was a Grissom MC28, great little cheap 9mm.
Oh yeah,
with a no light. I forget the model number of O-light on it.
And the Grissom, that was an M&P knockoff, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So there's some M&P holsters that would fit these things.
Oh,
but for the specific light that I had on this thing,
yes,
a holster, I could get one made out of the States, but it was going to cost me, all said and done, by the time I got it made, custom, and shipped to Canada, it's going to cost me more than what the pistol was worth.
Right.
So I walked into Barton's, and I said to this man sitting right here, why doesn't someone in town just buy a kydex press and start pumping this stuff out? And he looked at me and said, why don't you fucking do it?
That's exactly what he would say.
It's exactly what he said. I think you guys covered it in the
if you've seen the problem, you are the volunteer.
Yeah. So I looked into it, and I've always been a tool guy. Like I'm a journeyman electrician. I have been for 15 years or something now.
Yeah.
I have a surplus of tools, half of which I don't touch.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, what do I need to actually do this? And then you start going down YouTube rabbit holes. This is what I need. This is what I can do. This is what so-and-so does. This is what this guy does. And just getting real basic ideas of what I need to start doing this.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not like I've kind of was there for kind of the progression of the kydex holsters. So you had some companies that were coming out that were making like your first kydex holster. I think was Raven was the first one who really mass marketed a lot of that
concealment,
stuff.
But they had some big hitters kind of pumping their gear for a while.
Yeah,
they kind of went off the rails and whatever.
Yeah, well, then you had companies like Bravo Concealment that came out that were making some. Kind of changing, the thickness of the kydex.
NSR for the concealed carry show.
Yeah. Now they're everywhere. There's a lot of small mom and pop things, but one of the things you don't see is a lot of that in Canada.
Yeah,
like carrying a pistol isn't quite as ubiquitous, and also it's just not an easy thing to get into to do well.
Well, and especially now, like when I started, you could still go to your local gun store or to bartonsbackcountry.ca and buy a pistol. They were accessible.
Yeah.
And then that was taken away from us. So it used to be real easy because all I had to do was I could talk to Lucas or Mike and be like, hey, what are the top, 5 guns that you guys sell?
Yep.
And what are the lights that you guys have in stock?
Yep.
And I can make holsters for the combination of all of those.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks.
And now the interesting thing I think is there's at that time there was this huge variety of pistols and lights. And now at least in the, like if you're looking at the competition side or the carry tactical side, the models of pistol have actually narrowed, and the model of light has narrowed. Like what's deemed as kind of that base quality Like as far as your surefire lights, you just got everybody running X300s.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of your entry level.
Yeah.
And then you've got like Streamlight makes a couple smaller ones. They're kind of in the game. But I mean, Olight's kind of a bad word now amongst most of the stuff. Like if you're looking at your major manufacturers, they're making it for SIGs, Glocks, Smith & Wessons, a couple of Walthers, and then like 4 lights.
Yeah.
Like there isn't this huge, and you can get custom anything from anyone, but it really seems like through the years, that pistol light combo has really come down to, a half a dozen to a dozen combinations that people are really, really using. So you got something in front of us. What's this?
Yeah. Well, this was actually, speaking of the little surefires.
Yep.
So that's a replica of a Glock 43.
Yep.
Which is prohibited in Canada. So it was.
But a lot of guys have the Glock 48s.
So they're So they're almost impossible to get your hands on. Like a lot of these I built off of airsoft replicas.
Yeah.
Because they're so close. Like I can mold an airsoft gun and it will fit your pistol.
Yeah.
If I know exactly what you have and I have the light, I can press one of those and it's I will guarantee that it will fit. If it doesn't, I'll make you another one.
Well, and that's kind of the way a lot of that milsim stuff is now. Is they're either made by Glock or they're made to that exact same spec.
Yeah, but I had a request to make a bunch of these. That's why I went and got the light and got the dummy gun and the magazine. And then the guy actually backed out on me last minute. So now I have these.
Yeah,
and but it seats really well.
Sure does.
Yeah.
I was showing Mike that this morning, because I threw it in the truck before I went to work this morning.
Oh.
Yeah. So
you 99% of the stuff that I will make, like it's literally, you throw a couple wraps of tape around it, make sure everything's pressed. I block everything out. I'll figure out how much room I need over the trigger.
Yeah.
Cut it out with wood, trace it all out, cut it out on a bandsaw, put everything together, tape it all together, throw the kydex in, like that's 0.08. So throw it in I used to use a toaster oven. Now I have an actual press and just use a temp gun, heat it to exactly 168 degrees.
Yeah.
And then I built.
So you make like a pre-mold of either using the blue gun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have to have a mold for something.
Yeah.
And then heat the kydex to cut everything out, figure out kind of, what I want to make, where the clips are going to go.
Yeah.
Where I need my retention washers to go. Because for this,
well, I know one of the things that Canadian builders, when I talked to the guy who, I can't remember his name, when he started solely Canadian, was doing holsters. And one of the things that they were having a hard time finding there was not a huge amount of kydex available in Canada.
Yeah.
And even once they could get that, it was your Chicago bolts, it was your belt clips, it was stuff like that trying to import that stuff was really, really hard, because they'd be like, oh, I need 200 belt clips. Why? How are these getting into the country, right?
And then fucking Amazon came along.
I guess.
I'm not sure if you can, I know you can buy some stuff on Amazon. I'm not saying you do, but I know that that once that kind of kicked the doors open, a lot of that stuff, just for screws and stuff like that, you can start buying it.
For sure. And these are kind of concealment holsters, which are kind of less seen in Canada. Some guys will run concealed stuff, and they're very, very, very rare ATC, so their authorization to carry. Some guys will run that stuff on the range, and some guys will use it in competition. There will be concealed courses of fire in competition. Are you still doing your classic the Raven did the Raven concealment was the pancake holster that they had? Are you still doing those the outside the waistband type holsters?
Most of the time that is what I'm doing, because if guys want to go to the range, have something on their belt. I really like these. I like the IWB. I like fit and feel of them. They're great. A lot of ranges. Doesn't matter if you have your holster training. They won't let you do that. I don't think anyone
it always comes down to insurance and liability.
Yeah, for sure. I know when I was shooting a lot and training a lot and competing a little bit, working from concealment, because it's the fastest, right? It's the fastest way to get the gun out, get it on target, and you're really running your split times that way much, much faster. It would seem to me that if I was training that way, even when I would go to competition or even running an outside the waistband holster, I was faster, because I had worked at something that I was really, really fast at, because from here and up, it's not that much further than from here and up. All your grip and stuff is roughly the same. Like where you're getting your grip, how you're presenting that pistol is all pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Are you doing anything as far as retention levels?
Most of the stuff I'm doing here, like it's just
like friction lock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have done ones with straps, nothing with any actually push button.
Yeah.
Like no, what did I forget which
like
levels?
ALS, SLS is like level 2, level 3 of like Safari Land, but I think I think it's level 1 where it kind of
it's just your friction lock.
I can't remember the class, but like basically you're like, it doesn't fall out. Like it's which for concealment holster, that's all you need. You don't need.
I've done some for some IPSC guys where there's a cam lock on it. So if they're shooting, they'll flip the cam lock up.
Yeah, they have to have some kind of
And then when they're in between, when they're riding around in their golf carts or whatever, they'll flip the cam lock down and it just pancakes it. Yeah, it just makes that retention so much tighter that it can't fall out.
Yeah.
But never anything with any locks or push buttons. You can buy, like I get most of this stuff through a company out of the States called Holstersmith. And they literally the amount of stuff they have in there, it's mind boggling. I go through there and look at it. I'm like, I don't know what half this stuff is.
Yeah. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah. But you can get it up over the border. It does take a couple weeks. It will sit at customs and they will go through everything. Like I've yet to get an unopened box from these guys.
Yeah.
And
it's
expensive.
Awesome, like tape with the lines on it saying, we've opened your package and looked at it.
Yeah. And every time something crosses the border, it's costing you an extra $95.
Yeah.
So I started making, a bit like, I got a couple holsters to make. I'll order a few sheets of kydex and some hardware. And you do that a few times. Like that was like $500 in shipping in the last couple months. Like, okay, I need to start doing bulk orders. Yeah. So now my garage is just full of this stuff. Yeah. It's like, okay, I probably have enough kydex to make 500 holsters.
Which is good because when I'll be like, hey, I need a thing for this baton. He's like, what?
Well, and that's just it too.
Or a knife. Like most knives, like there's lots of cool shit that comes out. Blades I like, and they come in like, an old man leather sheath. Yeah. I'm an old man and I like leather, but it's not fucking cool for carry.
And everything has its place. Like, kydex is great. If you need to carry something in minus 30, minus 40, you probably don't want something made of plastic, right? So you're going to want something made of leather or cloth. Like everything kind of has its place. As far as retention, durability, all that stuff, I mean, kydex is the way to go.
Yeah. It's super easy to work with and it's super forgiving. I've done knife holsters for a couple guys here. Like, hey, I got this custom blade, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And I've gone and made them and they'll call me a couple months later and be like, this thing's not really working. It happened once to me. It's happened a couple times where I have to go and I have to fix and, they're knives. Even if it's for holsters for pistols. These are things that are going to get used. It's hard. So if I tell anybody that I'm making them something, I'm like, if you ever have a problem with this, because we did this face to face and I told you this is going to work, if it breaks, if it cracks, if it does not work for you, bring it back. I'll do it again.
Yeah. Well,
you're going to pay for this once. Yeah. And I'm never going to charge you to do it again.
Well, if you're doing one-offs, then everything is a prototype.
Exactly.
That's the nature of custom work.
Yeah. 100%.
You don't really know because it's like, Preston has made, probably 5 or 6 custom pieces for me where I'm like, we're sitting there, we're having a discussion at the counter. I'm like, hey man, I need this. And he's like, okay. It's like, maybe there's a rough sketch, maybe not. Maybe it's just me pointing at some other thing. Like if this was like this over here, and then, he comes back with the concept.
Yep.
I mean, I've been happy.
I've modified kydex holsters and knife sheaths and stuff like that. Cause once you wear it, and you're like, oh, this has a sharp edge that's digging in when I'm in this position, right? Yeah. And I can just, out comes the grinder, grind a little bit off, round that edge off, or this seemed tight here, but I can only get that Chicago bolt so tight. So I got to either shorten that rubber spacer that's in there a little bit so I can get a little bit more squish in there. But I think that's just normal when you're actually using the stuff that you're
100%.
That you're getting out there.
Well, and then there's I had one of those a couple weeks ago where the guy's like, man, this thing's too tight and I keep putting spacers in and I cannot get this gun to draw. I'm like, okay, bring it back. I'll meet with you. Let's see it. And he goes and he hands it to me and all the spacers he put in are the outside of the kydex. Yeah. So he's tightening it every time he puts a washer in.
Like, bro, those go on the inside.
And I'm just like, okay, well, give me a minute. Let me see if I can. So I change everything out. He's like, was that it? Yeah. He's like, I'm sorry I wasted your time. It's like,
You don't know what you don't know.
No,
exactly.
But the reality too, though, is you have to be a gracious host. Like when you're making the product, you can't expect everybody else to know everything about it. You have to become the subject matter expert. So it's kind of you just have to fix it and get them on their way. Like this is what it's supposed to do. And then
I've built them before for Dan Weston 1911s, and they're not all the same. So you're like, okay. So I had a guy call. He goes, "Hey, this thing's too tight." I'm like, "Okay, well, loosen off their." It's like I did. I took the retention washers right out. It does not work. I'm like, bring it to me. So he brings me the holster. Luckily, he just lived down the road. Just the one little spot had to be heated. So I threw some like saran wrap tape over it, or like that metal. It's not duct tape, but the stuff that they use for piping. It's like tin foil. Yeah. Threw that over it. Just heated the one spot. Loosened it off a little bit. Boom. It was done. It was perfect. But then I have done them for guys who are like, "Hey man, I got you to make this holster for me for this custom knife and it doesn't work." So he brings it back to me. It's a different knife. I go, "Well, this isn't the same knife." He goes, "Yes, it is." Well, I have pictures of the ones I made for you. I made you this one. Yeah. It's like, "No, that's the same blade." Like, yeah, but it's a different handle. Will it still fit?
No, because what do you think it's friction locking off of?
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, I'll rework it for you, or I can make you a different one for this handle. Yeah. What would you like me to do? Because I'm going to charge you for both.
Yeah. To put that into perspective, I mean, guns is one thing. Like, if you take two Glocks side by side, they'll probably measure out the same. But if you take two knives doesn't matter whether they come from a custom maker, like a knife smith who makes knives by hand, or if they come from a company that makes knives, they're probably different. Because even like if you look at Condor, for example, they got some pretty slick knives, but they all measure different. They're all handmade still, and it came from a factory. But every knife is finished by a dude. Like there's no way.
Well, and I think you could with automation and with forging process being what they are, you can probably mass produce blades. But when it comes to grinding that handle, like how are you going to have because most guys, you're measuring it with your hand. Yeah. There's no gauge or anything like that you're putting on that handle. Oh, it's, half an inch here and 3/4 here. And like maybe there is when they're mass producing some of that stuff.
If the thickness is out by a 32nd of an inch between your knives, so if I have this knife and the other next one's a 32nd bigger or smaller, it ain't going to fit the same.
Yeah, exactly.
What it is. Yeah. And you might not really feel that in your hand, but for that lock.
And usually for knives, I don't put a retention washer in. Usually you don't have to.
Yeah, all the knives I have that have a true kydex holster, it's a friction fit just off of some nub or piece of the tang or something on the knife.
Yeah, and most of them you can. Sometimes you can if you don't mind the kydex coming up over the grip a little bit, just covering the handle at some point, you can get it to lock in there. But compared to this, like when this thing's sitting at home, it's home. Yeah, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, and it has to be that way.
And there's nothing else there. Like you said,
it's a fine line to having that locked in there to yanking the holster out on your draw stroke.
Oh, and I do that constantly because when I make something and I'll go and I'll test it out and I'll be like, "Hey, how does this work?" And you go to take the first draw stroke and it doesn't come and it locks. I've even done it with holsters I've made for myself. Yeah. You take it to the range and you're like, "Oh, this will work perfectly," and it catches on something.
Yep, I've had a few where it's like that pistol's in there. Not sure I'm getting it out of here without a screwdriver.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it does. And lots of these,
you just got to loosen off the bolts and get it out.
Especially now with how they'll cut slides. You get all these different.
Oh yeah,
like everything. You can
got get an edge or serration or
everything looks cool. So it's got shark teeth on the side of it. You're like, well, that's going to catch something and it's going to wear the kydex. So a little bit of wear and tear. It might work itself in. It might work itself out.
I never thought of that. All those ultra textured slides and stuff like that. That's going to be hard on holsters, man.
Yeah.
You're like pretty much putting a rasp file into that thing every fucking time you do a draw stroke.
But also, if you actually wear one out, good for you.
Absolutely, man.
Because that means you're dry firing or you're doing
10,000 repetitions, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like
and nothing lasts forever.
I've worn out exactly one fucking holster where I actually wore it out, and that was an old Blade Tech. When Blade Tech was
I forgot about Blade Tech.
Blade Tech was the absolute fucking king.
Yes.
Of holsters for the longest time.
That was it.
I'm sure they're still like if you want a kydex, it was Blade Tech.
It was Blade Tech and Uncle Mike's for like the longest time when you wanted holsters in Canada.
And Blade Tech was by far fucking superior. It was good stuff back in the day, but I actually wore out a Blade Tech IWB holster for a G19. I actually wore it out, like to the point where I was like, it just didn't really work at it. I couldn't really tighten it anymore. But that was 20 years ago. So,
yeah, well, it is what it is, man.
So if you actually wear one out, good for you. It means you probably shot 100,000 rounds for your pistol and worked who knows how many draw strokes and finally broke something.
Yeah, for sure.
And most of it can be repaired by simply changing a screw or putting a new buckle on it or whatever.
So have you actually done any work, Preston, for any of those milsim guys that are around? I know we got a huge community in Grand Prairie.
Not that I'm aware of. No, most of the stuff there's a couple of guys here in town that I've these were supposed to be for the new city police.
Okay.
So they had come to me and said, hey, we have a product that we're going to be getting in that we can't get holsters for. We heard that you make custom stuff. Can you do this?
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, sure. And so they got me to bring all this stuff in and I made them for them. And they're like, yeah, we might go another way. So I send them pictures. I'm like, everything's done. If you want to try, I have these ready. They're in Grand Prairie. They will fit your gun. I can guarantee that 100%. So if you want to test them out, they're here. And that was yesterday. So we'll see if they come and if they take these things and they want to do them, great. Because if not, they're going to have to bring them over the border and they're going to cost them probably twice as much to get them up out of the States.
Absolutely.
So if they do, great, then I can make them an endless amount because I have everything here. And they were talking about doing these for some guys in Ontario as well.
Right.
So if they go ahead with them, I could probably make, a couple dozen of these and ship them out in the next couple of days.
So if how much of this process is by hand and how much can you automate it? If
most of it is me time spent. Yeah. I've done ones for Bartons, for Glock 19s and stuff that didn't have any lights. Just you guys back in the day when you're like, we can have something for guys who want to come in and do.
Absolutely, these guys have a range. 100%. They do training and stuff like that. Guys want to take the holster course, but
it was. I think when he first started, pistols were still legal. Mm-hmm. Right? They are legal.
Those
now.
are the days.
Let's be clear, they are still legal.
You just can't buy new ones.
You can't buy any new ones.
So the government's saving me thousands of dollars a year.
Right. I think we had just got to the point where I was like, hey man, give me 6 Glock 17 holsters and 6 Glock 19 holsters, where we're we want to start putting this stuff on the wall. It's boom, the OIC comes down. So it was kind of sort of like when we started the range. It was a bunch of things we're just ramping up. Everything's getting everyone's getting pumped and hyped, and then it was kind of
everything changes,
which has probably made it a little bit difficult too for to a certain extent.
Yeah. Well, this is a hobby of mine. Yeah. This isn't my 9 to 5. I'm not sitting in my garage making holsters waiting for someone to come and buy one. Yeah. And even who's Jeremy, the guy you had on, makes websites. Yeah. I got him to make me a website.
I've seen it.
It's
really nice.
I'm if you can do this, because then I realized that not everyone has Instagram. Yeah. There are people that still go on Facebook and people that don't have social media at all. Good for them. Yeah. But if I can just put a www. Here's everything that I will ever make for you on the internet. You don't 100%. Have to have any affiliation with any social media. Yep. So I did that, and then I was like, okay, now I just got to change my business cards. And it's been months. And all I got to do is go and get new business cards. And I've just been dragging my feet. He's even sent me emails, been like, hey, man, how's the website? I'm like, oh, yeah, I got my wife to check it out, and she ordered a holster online. I know everything works. Yeah, but I just haven't jumped to that next step.
Yeah, right. We'll get you out in front of our 80 some YouTube subscribers.
Yeah. Is that how many we have now?
Yeah. We lost one the other day. We offended somebody.
Ooh. We're going to propel you into fame here.
Did they work for Vortex?
I have no idea. As long as we're gaining some, if we're losing the odd one, I think we're doing the right thing. Yeah. I'm not here to please everybody. No. It is what it is.
Well, and it's funny, even driving to your house, I made a holster at one point. I delivered a holster for a guy down the block. I can't remember his name. His name's got to be in my phone somewhere. But it's I've been to that house before. I'm pretty sure I've been in his basement, and I know exactly what he has for rifles.
Yeah, well, that's just it.
It looked a lot like this basement. You walk in, and you're like, hey, I recognize half the stuff in here. And, badges on the walls and the books that I've read.
The kydex market, it's broader than just holsters, right? So, there's a lot of magazine retention. So people are using soft pouches, but they're using kydex keepers. So in there for mag retention. There's a lot out there that can be done. Like you said, for a specific, you want to have you want to carry a baton, you want to carry bear spray, all that stuff. Right? There's a huge market out there, and it's relatively cheap, because if I wanted to buy an old leather, holster for my smoke wagon, which I really actually want to do.
You do.
I probably have more options in Canada, and probably more options just locally with people that work leather, where I could get something made, rather than to go the kydex route. Because I can think of like 3 off the top of my head, including yourself.
Yeah.
There's Fox Strategic, there's Solely Canadian, and Marshall Controls.
Grey Fox, yeah.
There's Grey Fox, yeah. Like
Blue Tack. But I don't know if they're
I don't know if they're making them or if they're importing them.
Yeah,
because I know that there's some outfits that are
Yeah.
branding stuff that they're basically buying from China.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty normal. But like as far as like having something custom made, or even having that made in Canada brand on the holster side, or just the kydex in general, there's not that many. And I know of people who've taken a crack at it, people who've started out, but because it's not easy to work with, it's really finicky. If you're using thick kydex, it's really like tough to work with. That never mind trying to make money at. It's kind of those businesses kind of came and went.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see that you're still doing it, even in the face of like this, dumbass government prohibition that we have. That I don't think we'll ever, not that I don't think we'll ever push back against the dumb legislation, or push it back like hopefully all the way to like a new firearms act. That would be fantastic.
So if it's gonna happen anywhere, it's gonna happen in Alberta.
Yeah, well, who knows? There's some interesting stuff happening in politics these days.
Yeah.
It seems every time I turn on my social media, there's something happening in Alberta that's really pissing off the Liberals. So I enjoy that.
Which is
I mean,
I like to be the thorn in someone's side at all times.
Yeah, I want what I want. Like when I enjoy good gear, right? Yeah. And in Canada, it's always been difficult to get. Not impossible, just really expensive. You're always having to import something from the U.S. If I want a Safariland holster that's not something that's off the shelf, you're waiting a long time. If I custom build one on their website and place the order, I'd be waiting months, maybe a year. For that sort of thing to show up.
So and what happens when it shows up and it doesn't fit?
Exactly.
Like I've done this. I don't know how many of these things I've made. It's a couple hundred at this point. And like even I've done them for Mike when he was going down. It wasn't King and 2 Mile. I think it was last year when he went down. He's like, "Hey, can you make me a kydex holster for a Kestrel?" I'm like, "Well, I'm not going to press a Kestrel, because if you press that thing too hard, there's $1,000 gone like that."
Sensors in there.
So I made a Kestrel block, an exact replica out of a piece of wood sitting outside my garage.
Yeah.
That one piece of wood that I've had there for 6 years that I'm like, oh, I'll use that one day. I milled it down to the exact same size as a Kestrel.
Yeah.
And I made a kydex holster for it, and I gave it to Mike. I was like, "Here, will this work?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'll take it down. I'll try it out." He's like, "Maybe it's something we can put on the website," because I'm sure no one makes kydex holsters for Kestrels. But just having those questions like, "Hey, the baton and with knives. Hey, can you do this?" Like, I'm sure I could. My wife's done it to me. She's like, "I need something like a chest rig where I can put my cell phone when I'm riding my horse." So she's on her horse and their cell phone's on her saddle. The horse takes off. She breaks a leg. She's
exactly.
on the bush.
You need that on your person.
Yeah,
man.
she's like, I need my phone on me at all time. I'm like, okay.
Can't have it in your pocket knowing you're riding.
Yeah. So just little stuff like that.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things I ever saw, and it came up, I don't know, kind of maybe about 5 to 10 years ago, was guys who were doing kydex holsters for skull cans.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But now you could just do them for your Zin cans. Like, like that kind of shit's everywhere, right? So there's always these kind of novel ideas. I think the biggest one I saw that made the most sense was tourniquets. Yeah. Because it's, if it's in a soft pouch, if your tourniquet's in a soft pouch, there's a chance that you can be leaning on it and moving it. If it's in a solid, static holster, it can be taken off your kit. You can have it up on the whole of like a visor of your vehicle and removed very, very quickly for employment, right? There's all kinds of stuff that you need to access with one hand very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where kydex shines, because you're not having to open a flap with one hand. You're not having to mess around. You're not going to have even leather will fold, right? If it's warm enough or worn enough. Whereas kydex doesn't. Yeah. It stays very, very strong.
For reholstering anything. Like reholstering in leather, that can be a 2-hand job.
Sure.
If that holster collapses. Yeah. If you don't have the rigidity of, and that's why like most of the stuff I do is, 0.08. Yeah. Most of the stuff you'll get is 0.06. So yeah, you get a lot more definition out of it, and it looks cooler, but it's gonna break faster. And yeah, it's not as durable. So
it's cool to see stuff like this being made locally, man. Like, I'm a total gear whore, and I used to be like all over the internet looking for, you know, the next best holster for whatever I was doing. I ended up buying from, you know, lots of Bravo concealment stuff. I was dealing with a company. I bought a couple holsters from an outfit called Armadillo Concealment. They were making some stuff that was really, really good, and they do a lot of different custom kydex and stuff like that. Now there's guys doing fabric wrap and stuff like that. So there's actually like fabric inside your kydex, smooth kydex, matte kydex, and then all your multicam kydex.
Yeah.
There's a company out of the States called T-Rex, and everything is interchangeable. So they'll have
I bought T-Rex arms.
Yeah, so they have an interlocking system here with like a hinge on it, and you just pull the pin out, take off your magazine, and put a handcuff holster there. Or you can run them separately. And that kind of stuff's really cool. But again, they're expensive to begin with, and trying to get those across the border. So I've had people be like, hey, can you replicate this for me? It's like, it's kind of like walking into a Ford dealership asking for a Camaro.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
like and
you can build what they're building, but you don't know. Like I had one of their holsters, and it ran okay, very minimalist. But again, it was one of these things where after I got it out on the range, shot it from a bunch of different positions, I was like, oh, this thing's got like angles on it. It's like digging in over here.
I don't fucking like this.
Nope, didn't. It ended up in the box of all the other fucking holsters I don't use anymore, right? Yeah. On the search for the next big thing, right?
Well, and it's cool because like I'll build something and then I'll send it out, and I'm wanting positive feedback. I've gotten it from you. I've gotten it from Mike. I made a holster for Benny, and all of a sudden Mike Rack's calling me going, hey man, this thing doesn't work. I'm like, who are you? Yeah. I've never made a holster for you. He's like, this is Ben's. I'm like, oh, okay. Tell Ben to come back and we'll change it. Yeah. And I've made stuff for him recently where I'm like, I know how big your frame is. Is this going to fit? I'm like, if it doesn't, bring it back and we'll fix it. Yeah. And then I saw him randomly out on the street one day. I'm like, hey, how did that thing work? I'm like, was it too long? I'm like, because if it is, let's shorten it. He's like, yeah, it's a little long. I want it to be up tighter. I'm like, hey, drop it off and let me know next time you're in town and we'll modify it. Because I want that kind of feedback. So if I make it for someone else that I don't know, that I don't have a personal relationship with, I'm not going to get that feedback.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the nature of custom gear is having that willingness to change the product because, you know, two guys can order the same product. Like, if I order it and Dave order it at the same time, it's going to fit both of us different. We're two different, you know,
exactly
types. So when you get into that custom gear, it's that's just how it is. Like people are looking for an exact kind of thing, and that's why they come to somebody like you because they want an exact fit.
Yeah, and exactly like I said before, if you're doing custom gear, then every piece is a prototype. Yeah, it's all version 1, right? So then you're going to get you have to take it out and you have to use it. And then you have to go back to the drawing board and change a couple of things. Like you said, if everybody was running like Glock 17s, right? Yeah. You can make a standard holster for Glock 17, which is exactly what companies like Raven Concealment and Blade Tech and stuff did like that. Like if you had, I think I had a Blade Tech for an M&P 9.
Yeah, they make good gear, man.
Yeah, you could go down to the outdoors store. I remember what we had here at the time, and they're now out of business. But and you could go down the holster aisle, and you can pick one off the rack that says M&P 9, and it's going to fit every M&P 9 that ever came out of Smith & Wesson's factory. Yeah, like they're all very, very simple.
I've built holsters for guys like, oh, I have this one, and they give it to you, and then there's like a corner like taken out with a grinder. You're like, oh, this is what I had to do to get it to fit my gun, or I made this modification, so then I modified the holster. It's like, oh, well, I'll just build you a custom one.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's not even the holster. Like the way that it rides is all in the mounting. Yeah. So if there's, you know, one of the things that I started to see is holster companies making it so you could clock it, right? So if you want to run it on
FBI carry, so you can like put that cant on it.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like you used to have to buy the holster that way. Yeah. Like, and then you couldn't change it.
But then you could take the screw out, you could just move the clip, and it's like, oh, look, I changed the angle.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And those kind of things started to change. But having custom gear, I mean, if you're running your equipment the way that it should be run, which is often and vigorously, then you're going to run into issues where you think, man, I'd really like to change this. I'd really like to change that. And well, thanks, man.
Thanks, sir. Well, I just finished making a dual 9mm mag pouch system for a guy, and he handed me these 2 magazines. I'm like, "You've never shot this gun." He's like, "How do you know?" I'm like, "These are the cleanest magazines I've ever seen in my life."
Or they're only clean once.
Yeah, there's no gunpowder on this.
Yeah, you can never get a magazine as clean as this one out of the box.
No.
I have tried. Yeah. And that's another thing too, is the accessory side of it, right? And mag pouches was one of them. For me, that was always one of the things where it was like, if you're running kydex mag pouches, and there would be a bunch of companies that would have decent kydex mag pouches. But again, you're buying them out of the States. By the time you get them up here, you're like, okay, I'm going to run, for competition, I want to run 3 mags. It's like, well, there's $150 for 3 kydex pieces this big.
Well, and I've had guys be like, "Oh, can you do this? And can you put my name on the back of it?" I'm like, "Sure." And even like for you, I think everything I've ever gotten, it's got the Lucas Orch. Everyone knows that symbol. If you've ever been to one of your training courses, you know where it is.
I don't think it's on
that one.
This was pre that.
But yeah, I've put it on, and I think I've put it on something of yours. I've laser engraved it because you get these little laser engravers, and then I can put my name on all my own stuff.
Yeah.
I've had guys be like, "Oh, I have blue eyes. Can you make that for me in blue?" Kenton, everything's purple. Hey, do you have that in purple, dude? Like, yeah, you're the only reason I own purple.
It's gonna go live. Now we can all shit talk him right now because it's gonna be on YouTube. No,
I prefer to shit talk him when he's here.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll get him back in here for that purpose.
Choking me
that
out.
Fucking purple haircut of his got him into trouble in Japan, man. We got flagged by security. He got pulled aside. I'm like, what the fuck? Where did he go?
I'm surprised he's the only one, man.
Well, he's one. That's one of the guys I kind of felt bad a little bit because he was one of those guys where I'm like, okay, like I'm not great at great at giving advice. I'm not the person to give advice. My life is my life. Yeah. I think my life is awesome. I've gotten myself in so much shit being like, hey man, you should try doing this, and find out that these guys are vastly more successful in all sorts of business and everything else that
you just don't know, man,
that I could ever dream of being. And Kenton's one of them. He's like, hey man, it's like a thing about becoming an electrician. I'm like, dude, do it. Like, quit your job right now. Like, get into the trades. It was like, whatever you were doing for work, quit your job. Your job right now is absolute dog shit.
He was working for Dave.
And then I found out he was working for you. I was like,
that's okay.
Shit. Son of a bitch.
No, we had talked about that long before we talked about bringing him on. We knew his career path. He stuck around about 2 years longer than I thought he was going to.
Yeah.
And I think he was just looking for the fit, right?
Yeah.
He was just looking for somewhere to get in. I had a neighbor at the time who was big in with Honeywell. He did a lot of work doing like hospitals, stuff like that. I spoke to him, and they just weren't hiring at the time. They just weren't bringing on any apprentices. Because it's a big organization with them. It's like big corporate. Yep. And he's like, no, we got guys that aren't working right now, But he eventually found the fit that he was looking for, and that's the thing. One of the great things about Grand Prairie is if you have an idea of what you want, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I want to talk to you, is because this is not mainstream.
Yeah.
Right? This is just think about something as niche as kydex holster making in Canada. Like, you're not doing it because you're like seeing dollar signs.
Yeah.
Right? You're doing it because you're seeing something that interests you, and you're thinking, I could do that. And then you start to think, well, how could I do that? And that's kind of how I ended up with the podcast, right? Somebody was like, hey, you should have a podcast. I'm like, that's a dumb fucking idea. Mm-hmm. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, I could have a podcast.
Well, what was the kid's name who bought you your first microphone?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Actually, it was these headphones.
Oh, was it the headphones?
That same motherfucker we were just trash talking.
We're just shit talking.
Kenton, I love you.
But it's one of those... It's just one of those things, like when you start, it kind of sits in the back of your mind, right? And you're like, well, maybe I could do it. And then you go on to the next step of, well, how? Like, if I were to choose to do this thing, then how could I do it? Yeah. And we're living in a place where we're lucky enough to have that ability where, you have a job, covers your mortgage, your expenses, your family's looked after. You've got a little bit of free time on your hands where you could take on something new. But a lot of people are just happy with the, hey, my mortgage is paid.
Yeah.
9 to 5. 9 to 5, or even not, like, even if they're working lots and they're doing well, they're not looking for another project.
Yeah. Right?
They're not looking for something else. Like, what else can I do? So when you start looking down the road of, the people sitting around this table, especially, are people who are never fucking bored, right? People who've got a lot of stuff going on and would probably take on another thing if they could find one more hour in the fucking day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I could clone myself, we would both be busy.
Yeah.
Like flat out. I mean, like as many hours as you get back in.
Yeah, my wife and I have had that conversation before. Like, what did we do when we lived in town? Like, we used to think we were busy, and then we bought an acreage. And we're like, okay, we're busy now. And then we had 2 kids and still lived on the acreage.
Yeah.
We've completely renovated the house. When we bought our house, we knew it was a beater. Like, okay, this is going to need, a lot of years of work. We are now 13 years into renovating our house. We have half a kitchen right now. Like, we're actively living in this. We took all the lower cabinets and all the flooring out of our kitchen and then got the phone call. It's like, oh, your kitchen's not going to be ready. Your counters and cupboards aren't going to be ready till middle of December. Yeah. Maybe after Christmas. It's like, all right, put the counters back in. She's like, well, how are we going to do that? I'm like, we're going to throw the dishwasher underneath. We're going to stick frame some legs. Yeah. We're going to put the sink back in, and it's just raw plumbing underneath there.
Yeah. Life mate tables from Costco.
Yeah.
Oh, fucking A.
And that's what it is. She told me when I got home from work today, she's like, she had primed the walls when I was at work. She had today off. Kids were at school. She's busy painting and getting everything ready. She's like, I need power put into all these outlets. Lucky me, I'm an electrician. So it's like, okay, I know what I'm doing on the weekend. I got to go up into the attic and down into the basement, fish wires all over the place. And just to get ready we're having her whole family up for Thanksgiving. It's like, so we're going to have an extra 9 people in our house and no kitchen on a very food-centric holiday. Well, but you just make it work.
Yeah. But I think there's something to be said for people who see their life as an ongoing project, right? And I was thinking about this today. It's like, you ever like, even like drive down the street or something like that, and you see like, okay, there's the houses in the neighborhood, and like this one's well kept. This guy mows his lawn, he painted the outside of his house, whatever, and you can tell. And then you'll see a house that doesn't. They don't cut the lawn. They don't. The shingles are gone.
They're like, that motherfucker needs to spray his weeds.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that there's people in this world who are driven to improve the area they're in, no matter what they're doing. Like if they were in prison, they would probably have the cleanest fucking jail cell. They would be like totally jacked because all they would do is fucking work out. They'd probably get 3 degrees on online university with all their time. Like they're just people that are like that, are constantly curious and constantly seeing the possibility of what it is. Yeah. Right. They can sit there and they can look at something instead of just being like, they're just like, they're going to find some way to improve it. Like they're not just going to sit there and watch the paint dry. They're going to go, okay, now that I'm done painting, I'd really like to replace this light fixture, or maybe this carpet needs to get done. Right. And they're going to constantly improve that situation that they're in. And then one of the things that I've noticed is there's people like that, and then they move on. So they sell that house that they kept really good care of and all that. And within 3 years, it's just decrepit. Yeah. Because the person that lived there is not a maintainer. They're not a producer, right? They're somebody who shows up at their job, does the bare minimum. They come home at the end of the day, they sit down on the couch, they turn on the TV or start playing video games. And that's their contribution is the fact that they do their 9 to 5 and they pay their taxes. Yeah. They make sure their kids are fed and clothed and done school on time. That's fine. But there's something about people who improve their situation. People that are constantly looking around, like you said, like you guys took on, an acreage, and then you had some kids, and now you're both obviously working. You've got other things cooking on the side, right? So you're in jiu-jitsu, you're making holsters, you're spending time with the family, like she's out riding horses, like, so that's obviously you guys have animals, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So is it just horses, or you got the whole menagerie now?
No, it's just, she's got horses we had the acreage, and horses was always the dream for her.
That's okay. Right. Let it all out.
Yeah, here we go.
Here we go.
Sorry, babe. We all knew this was coming. No, but we bought, I think actually, we had our neighbors' horses it was a dry year one year, and our neighbors were struggling. And we had just got our property fenced. It was always something we wanted to do. Yeah. And then the neighbors, Dana's like, oh, well, we have all this grass, and usually we mow it in the fall, so it's gone for the snow, so we can, go snowshoeing and stuff in the winter. And then we got these horses, and within 30 days, we had our own horse. Because she's like, well, if the neighbor's horses can be here, why can't I have my own horse? Oh, geez. And I knew this going in. Yeah. I married a horse girl.
And it's good that you knew that going in. I can't imagine somebody getting married and finding out after the fact.
Yeah. Like, well, and I had buddies who were like, oh, yeah, you can buy her a motorcycle. That'll cure her. I'm like, no, not this one. Oh, it's not going to happen.
And that's fine. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. my newest probably guilty infatuation is I've stumbled upon several horse trading Facebook pages. And I'm like, I did this with boats a few years ago. I was doing a bunch of camping at Gwillem Lake and what's the other one that's out there, Moberly Lake and stuff like that.
You bought a schooner and went East Coast.
Oh man, you start getting boat envy in the worst fucking way, and you're like, how can I justify buying a boat? And you're like, you're gonna use that thing twice a fucking year. Like, you're never gonna you're gonna have to store it. You're gonna need a trailer. You're gonna need all this shit that's gonna go in your boat that you're never gonna fucking use.
You're like, you know what? It's only $750,000. How am I gonna make this?
But exactly. There's two types of people. You can buy something, like you said, with a house. You can buy it and you can fix it up. You can take care of it.
Yep.
So you can either invest in something and make money.
Yep.
Or Jerry Seinfeld has that bit. Everything we buy is garbage.
Yeah.
Everything we buy is garbage. You can spend $1,000 on, a piece of furniture. Eventually it's going to end up in the trash. Yep. Everything we buy, every vehicle, even our houses right now, houses are appreciating, but eventually they're going to tear this house down.
Yeah. It's the raw of entropy,
they're going to build something else here. Everything we do is wasting money. So you can either invest in something smart and make money on it, or you buy it and eventually you will throw it in the trash. And you're just you hear that stuff and you're like, it's so real. But I don't think about every time I go, and even with holsters, I could have bought the one holster of my Grissom MC-28, and when I got rid of that gun, it would have been gone too. I would have wasted $500 on this holster. Instead, Lucas told me to quit being a pussy and to do it myself. So I did, and now I make money. Well, it's not a ton of money. I've maybe made, $10,000.
But I mean,
making holsters in however many years, but it was profitable in the second year.
Did it paid for your equipment?
Yeah, exactly. And now I don't know how many
knowledge
holsters.
And because you're a tradesman too, it's kind of that. Yeah.
Well, I've been shooting Glocks for I don't know how long, and they have not changed the geometry of Glocks, and I still have not found the perfect Glock holster. I found the ones that work, and I'm always like, I could probably get a better one.
Yeah. We need to go to the range.
I could probably get a better one. I could probably have, probably figure something out. Yeah. And I'm always in the market for more holsters, so we'll definitely chat after the podcast.
And I wasn't a gun guy. I always wanted to, I grew up on Vancouver Island. So you want to talk about guys wasting money on boats? I have friends who used to go down to the States every year, buy boats, come home, and sell them. And they'd run their boat all summer, and then they'd sell it for $10,000 more than they paid for it.
You guys that did that with RVs.
And these guys did it every year. And by the time they were in their early 20s, they had $60,000, $70,000 boats.
Yep.
They were buying something as an investment. They were playing with it all summer, and they were flipping it to someone who wanted it. Just wanted a new boat.
Yeah.
They were putting in the work, and they knew what they were doing, and they were making money on it every year.
Yeah.
And they just kept doing it over and over and over again. So I was looking at buying my first house, and these guys are driving these, $70,000, $80,000 boats every summer. You're like, how are you doing this?
Yeah.
There's people that don't lose money.
There's people that are smart, the people that are disciplined. I have friends of mine like that. I'm going to college, taking on a whole bunch of student loan debt. They own a quarter section out by Sexsmith.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're the same age. How the fuck?
Yeah.
But all they did was they were smart.
Yeah.
We went to the same high school. We got the same diploma.
Yeah.
I got all this debt, and they worked their summers and after school and saved their money.
If you're willing to take the right risk at the right time.
Yeah, and it's opportunity too, right? It's probably somebody like an uncle of theirs or whatever, or their grandfather was looking to downsize. Oh, maybe I'll sell that, quarter over there, and they're like, fuck, I'll buy it. They want to keep it in the family for sure, man.
Yeah. No, I got buddies back home who, went to university, went to UVic for however many years, got an English degree. We're going to become a teacher. And well, fuck, I was making more money waiting tables the whole time I was going to university. Now I got to take this job at a lower wage. I'm just going to keep waiting tables with a degree. It's like, why?
Yeah.
But that's where their parents want them to go. It's everything else. My mom paid $1,000 for me to go to trade school the first year. And then I got a government grant that paid for my second year. Then I got a government grant that paid for my third year. So I went through 4 years of trade school for $1,000.
So this broaches the topic. Are you from the island?
Yeah.
And how the fuck did you end up here? Because I run into so many people from Vancouver Island recently. I got some family that's migrated to the island.
Yeah.
But I work with two guys. One guy's from the Lower Mainland. Another guy's from the Vancouver Island. But the amount of people I meet in Alberta, especially recently, from Vancouver Island, was it a family thing?
It's so expensive to live there right now.
And did you live, where did you live on the island?
Well, I was born in New West, so every time I buy a gun, I got to say that I was born in New Westminster, British Columbia.
Okay.
But then when I was in like kindergarten, grade 1, my parents sold our house, and both my parents were in real estate. My dad still tells the story. He got in shit for buying a house on the Lower Mainland and spending over $100,000.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Could you imagine?
Yeah. Like all of his real estate buddies and like my grandparents, like, you're going to spend $100,000 on a house. You're crazy. The last time. Yeah. And that's the house I remember growing up in. But my parents, I don't know why or what, but they're like, nope, we're selling everything. We're buying a Suburban. We bought a 1990 Suburban and we drove. We drove through all of Canada, all the states, through Central America, lived in Guatemala City for 10 months.
Are your parents old hippies?
No. That's what's weird.
That's weird too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
just a quest for adventure.
Yeah. So I did grade 1 and grade 2 homeschooling. My sister's 5.5 years older than I am.
Okay.
So I was 6, 7. She was becoming a teenager. And we lived in a tent in North America.
Like down the Sunshine Coast, down to like
Mexico.
Drove,
drove all the way down the East Coast and came back on the West Coast.
Oh, wow.
So we were gone for just over 2 years. So then I got back to school and I did French immersion for like kindergarten, grade 1. And then when we were down in Central America, my parents were teaching me how to speak Spanish and how to read and write in Spanish. So we got back, something went wrong. My dad left someone in charge of like our family finances. And when we got back, we were broke.
Oh, shit.
So someone mismanaged money somewhere.
Yeah.
So we were living in I think my great grandma's house on Vancouver Island for free. Oh, so that's how we ended up on the island.
In Victoria?
In Victoria.
Okay.
Yeah. So then I got dropped into grade 3 and I can't read and write.
Hola, senor.
Exactly.
What the fuck?
Because I've been learning how to speak Spanish and my parents are like, oh, this will be great. We'll put this kid in French immersion and he'll be bilingual. Oh, so then I get dropped into the regular school system in grade 3 and I'm like,
So the homeschooling was missing a couple segments of learning.
Yeah. But it was great because.
But I mean,
we fished and we camped and we saw.
Oh, yeah.
My wife hates it. We'll be sitting on TV. I'm like, I've been there. She's like, shut up. She's like, you were 6. Like, I've been there too.
I've still been there.
Yeah.
Still counts.
Like, you look at like Chichen Itza and like Tikal, Tulum, all these old Mayan ruins, and like Mount Rushmore, and like everywhere. You're just like, oh, okay. Literally.
My family traveled quite a bit, like not internationally, but there was always a road trip involved. And that kind of stuff when you're young, when you're really, really young, leaves a huge impression.
Yeah.
Because you're not just, 4 walls and structure and, going to school and all that stuff. It was always like,
well, sure, and this would be pre-cell phone, so it wasn't like you were stuck to a tablet.
Random adventures. I'd be lucky that just like throw an Archie comic in the back of the thing, be like, shut up, and we're going another 10-hour drive.
Exactly. So then, like grade 3, I'm like, okay. They're like, well, here, now sit in this classroom. It's like, I've never sat in a classroom ever. I want to go outside and play and fish and just, smash a rock with a stick. Like, just get me out of here. So until grade 12, it was just like, I'll do exactly what I have to do to get me out of these 4 walls. And when I'm out of here, I'm never sitting in a classroom again.
And did you did all your high school in BC?
Yeah, in Victoria.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So then after that, I think I had this summer. My mom was like, when school is back in, like when everyone else goes back in the fall, you're either going back to school or you're moving out. Like, do whatever you want to do. So I'm like, okay, well, I got to find a job. I had lost my license that summer.
Like physically, or the police took it away?
I think the police showed up at my house because BC insurance was through the roof at the time. So my mom owned my first pickup truck.
Yeah.
And they came back to the house.
Like $20,000 a year or something to insure it if you were a kid or whatever.
Yeah, the cops came knocking on the door. Like, do you own that brown Nissan pickup truck? She's like, yes. She's like, where is it? Like, we were asking the same question. She's like, don't worry, I got this. I got home, walked the door. She's like, keys.
Oh, jeez.
Like, you no longer have a driver's license. So, yes, I still had a driver's license.
Oh,
but I got grounded.
Yeah.
For the summer. So I was working at the visitor information center.
That's probably better than a lot of the alternatives.
Yeah, she saved my ass.
Yeah.
But there's a visitor information center when you get off the ferry in Sydney, like as soon as you get over to Vancouver Island from the mainland, that I could walk to. So I got a job there for the summer, working like, oh yeah, here, this is how you get to Butchart Gardens, this is how you get to blah, blah, blah. And a guy came in, he was working in Calgary for a company called Volker Steven. They did underground, they did road stuff, they put in sewers and pipelines and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, what are you doing here? He's like you're young, like you're trapped in this stupid fucking building, watering flowers and dealing with tourists. He's like, come work for me.
And when was this? Like in the 90s?
2003.
Oh, okay.
I graduated in 2002.
Okay.
I just turned 40 this year.
Right.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, I'll come work for you. So I threw a canopy on the back of my truck, threw my snowboard in there, a sleeping bag, a mattress, and I'm like, I'm moving to Alberta. See you later.
So it was on to Calgary.
Yeah, and drove to Calgary, found this guy's office, and he's like an operator there. I thought he owned the company. He's just a grunt.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
just throwing around big Alberta oil money in BC,
this
acting like
guy
a big
told
shot.
me to come here and send an application, and I filled out the form, and I'm like, okay, so when do I start? She's like, tomorrow morning. This is where you go.
Yeah, welcome to Alberta.
Yeah.
When do I start? Right now. Like,
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, can you start right now?
I did like my construction safety training course in the office in a shirt and tie. I thought I was going to this big. No. Do you own steel toes and a hard hat? Okay, here you go. Show up, and I was shoveling gravel for 11 hours a day,
here's
6
a goon
days a week.
spoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, fucking right.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was making, but I was making like $12 an hour. I'm like, fuck, this is more than minimum wage.
Yeah.
So within like a month of sleeping in the back of my truck, I think I only slept in my truck for a couple weeks. I had some friends that had an apartment there.
Oh, okay.
So I was sleeping on the floor in the living room for there.
So you were totally without like friends, contact, or
I
anything
was
like that?
homeless for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And I actually have a picture somewhere of what the back of my truck was
That's
set up.
chasing a dream, man.
And I showed my father-in-law. I'm like, that was my house.
So you weren't like trying to get away from the island. You were just like, you were just curious. You were bored. The quest for adventure.
Yeah, I was just after money and a place to live.
Yeah.
And BC was still more expensive then than it is now.
Yeah,
or
it's pretty rough
than
now.
Alberta is.
Yeah.
But so then I just got my own apartment. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. And then I can't remember. I was doing something on a job. No, it was my uncle's place in Whistler. My uncle had a decent amount of money and was always buying houses and flipping them. And my dad would come and be the contractor and, build stuff and add extra rooms and do this and do that. And we spent one winter in Whistler at my Uncle Mark's place. And the electrician came in and was doing all sorts of stuff. I'm like, that's phenomenal. I'm like, I want to do that. And it just planted a seed.
Okay.
So then once I got out to Alberta, I was applying at all these different electrical companies, couldn't find anything. Went back, we'd get laid off for the winter because it was too cold to do underground stuff. It was too cold to backfill. Yeah. So I went back and just had like odd jobs. I was on unemployment, working cash for different people. Yeah. And I'd done volunteer work at the fire hall when I was in high school. So there was one of the volunteers owned an electrical company. And I sent him a resume and said, hey, I've done volunteer work with you guys. I know so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. They can give you references, but I want to start an apprenticeship. And then I think as soon as I got laid off, like just by chance, within a week or two, he called me and goes, hey, show up. I'm in the basement of this hotel. So show up with a resume. Again, shirt and tie. Yeah. And he's like, grab a drill, bring that wire, bring it over here, up into this box. It's like, okay, here we go. And started with there. And then, that was it.
There's a lot to be said for showing up like you give a shit, though.
Yeah.
You show up to a job interview, and you're going to look like two things. One, you just left the job you got. Or B, you're looking for the job you want.
Yeah.
If you show up like it's, laundry day, and you're wearing sweatpants, and you didn't comb your hair, and maybe you didn't shave for 3 days, and you show up, I'm probably not going to hire you. You better be you better be a savant, man. You would be quoting Shakespeare in that interview or something, man, because I ain't hiring you. But you show up like you want a job, like you want to work, and okay.
Well, and it was great because I started on the island because I had just been laid off from working in Alberta, so I was freeloading off my parents, sleeping on their couch, collecting unemployment, got a job. It's like, okay, now I had gone to high school there, so I got a place with one of my buddies, worked for a year, and I was like, I can probably make more money doing electrical in Alberta. So I moved to Medicine Hat.
Medicine Hat?
Yeah.
Shit.
Had a friend of a friend of a friend who knew a guy that, same thing, owned an electrical company. So I went out there. I was like, hey, when can I start? You start right now.
Okay. And that was what, residential, commercial, industrial?
That was doing oil field stuff on the Suffield military base out there.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was a world of change.
Yeah.
Like, you have to do the training. You have to call in. They have to know exactly where you are at all times. But I've been, wiring houses on the islands. They're a pretty cushy job.
Yeah.
To all of a sudden there's F-18s flying over you and
the
helicopters,
cold and
the mud, the snow, the pronghorns out there. You're like, what are these things running around? Like, it's just
mine are different.
It was completely different. And then so I worked a year there doing industrial stuff, bolting cable tray and stuff together.
Yeah.
Then I had to go to school. back to the island, freeloading off the parents.
Okay.
Go through first year, come back to Alberta, back and forth. So I did.
So you were doing your trade school in BC and working in Alberta?
I'd go to trade school in January.
Okay.
When it was really cold. And I'd be golfing on the island while everyone else is working.
Genius, man.
It was brilliant.
Yeah. It's a whole lot better than driving to fucking Fairview, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Well, and then I had a buddy who had moved up here. He was an automotive mechanic on the island and went to a job fair in Victoria and got a job working for Finning up here. Right. He was working for the Finning shop in Claremont. And then another buddy moved up here because it's like, hey, Grand Prairie's booming. You can work anywhere up here. So I came up here, wired a bunch of like condos and stuff here in town.
Yep.
And then went back, finished my 4th year. And then when I got out of 4th year, Flint was looking for, they had too many apprentices and didn't have any journeymen. Oh, so I'd never done industrial at all.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, we'll teach you everything you need to know. We just need guys with journeyman tickets. I'm like, sign me up.
There you go.
That was 2008.
Yeah.
So it was like huge recession year. Everyone's, oh no, poor me.
Yeah,
I can't find work. Can't do this. Can't do that. I think it was the first year I ever made over $100,000.
Yeah.
They were working us to the bone. It was like 24-4.
Yeah. 08, like the global recession, the economic meltdown didn't really happen in Grand Prairie. Like there was.
It did. It
did, but
in a lot of cases, because I do remember like people who were hurting pretty bad. But for this area, it was
but for this area,
good.
there was still lots of work.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it wasn't the end of the fucking world.
Yeah, 2008, I was about as busy as I've ever been.
Yeah. Same. Like I remember 08 for me, like I was fucking slammed up here.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking more of the 2014, the what they call it, the economic downturn.
Yeah, because 2012 was like the end of the world, the big rapture. We were all gonna die.
Yeah.
2014 was a bit of a
that was when they were laying people off like crazy up in Calgary and a lot of the like your bigger corporate oil companies and stuff like that. But yeah, I've never suffered from a lack of work.
No,
in northern Alberta.
As long as I've been living in Grand Prairie, I've never had an unscheduled day off work.
Yeah, yeah.
There was just always something.
Yeah.
So, but I was always willing to go to work. Like, if there's nothing out in the field, I'll sweep the shop. If you're going to pay me, I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
I was just willing to do anything. So I'd get sent out on these crazy little stupid jobs.
Yep.
When I was in Medicine Hat, I remember going out with my boss one day, and he's like, this is all just like PR stuff. And when we're done, we'll go to the bar and we'll drink. I'm like, well, I'll clean your truck or do something. Like, give me something to do while we're driving around. He's like, okay, like, I don't really have anything to do, but yeah, you can organize tools in the box when we stop and I'm talking to clients. I'm like, sure.
Sounds good, yeah.
Well, that's the kind
just anything.
That's the kind of work ethic that's rarer and rarer, right? Like when you're training people and showing people the ropes, and not that the work ethic itself is not there. I think what I'm finding more and more is showing people the value of it. Like they're willing to work. They just don't have like the A plus B equals C end of it. Like if I do the work, then I get the respect. Then I get the opportunity, and then I get the money.
Yeah.
Right? They just don't see that pathway. Yeah. So once they kind of get, people will, like young people that want to work, they just don't see here's the output and here's the value of the output. And then getting from A to B. Because I know for myself it was a long stretch. But then once I figured out that I was like, oh, if I'm just the guy who puts his hand up and says yes to everything, if I'm the guy who comes in early and stays late, if I'm the guy who doesn't say no, and that was one of the things in my career that people always said, like, you just never say no.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, because there's always a way to get something done.
Yeah,
I'm not looking for ways to say.
The fucking best money I've ever made is being a journeyman Red Seal B-pressure welder, sweeping a floor and washing trucks. I'm like, yeah, I'll fucking wash trucks. Like, I don't care, man. Yeah. Like, it's...
Yeah,
just do it anyway.
Yeah, it's better than being in the bottom of a pit. It's soaking wet, welding pipe together.
I get paid by the hour. I don't care what I do. So if I'm sweeping out Bay 7, I'm sweeping out Bay 7. It's gonna be shiny when I'm done too.
Oh yeah. Once I figured out, because I remember when the safety end of like the oil field started to kick in, and it became really regulated, and I remember pushing back on it pretty heavy for a long time, and then I realized, I'm like, well, this is futile. Like, eventually all that paperwork has to get done. All that documentation has to get done. So I'm like, I'm just going to do it at the end of the day when all the actual work is done. When you're paying me time and a half.
Yeah, that's right.
And then I will do all the paperwork you want at time and a half. And nobody ever batted an eye because all my paperwork was always done. Everything that needed to be documented was documented. Incident reports, job reports, all that stuff was always done. Nobody ever batted an eye about how much it cost to do. They're just like, oh, here's somebody who's doing all the actual work. And he's handing in his paperwork. This is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
This man's
it's easier for them not to have to chase you.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll just cut your check. Like, here, good job.
Yeah, here you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely that work ethic. It seems rare and rare, but I think it's still there. Like, I think the young people want to see it. They just don't know how to get from A to B. They don't have that adventurous spirit that you had. Well, you're going to leave your folks and go to Alberta how many times?
Yeah, it was repeatedly. Well, I didn't realize it until, like I said, my father-in-law, I showed him a picture of my truck. He's like, you need to keep this because it's an actual picture in a photo album somewhere. Mm. This is, like you said, pre-cell phones. And then my sister-in-law got married a few years back, and her husband's like, yeah, he's like, I went to his stag. He's like, tell my buddies your story. I'm like, what story? He's like, well, we all live within a mile of here. Like, This is home. Like, you drove out here and lived in your truck and then started a business. I was like, well, you look at it at the end. If you look at it, oh yeah, now they live outside of town on 20 acres and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's all the steps in between that you don't really see the progression. And even now, like with kids, they go, oh, kids are lazy. I think they're just unmotivated.
Well, that's just it. I don't think they see the value in it.
Yeah.
Like, they don't see the A plus B equals C, right?
Well, and I've done stuff too where it's like, and having the acreage and having, you got to work 50 hours a week and then you come home and then you got to plow the driveway and plant the garden and
fix everything all the time.
Yeah. Reno debate. Like, we gutted our house. Like, we've taken that thing down to bare bones and completely rebuilt it. And then
if you moved into your dream home, it would be decaying.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the law of entropy just applies to everything. Like, you have to constantly be working at stuff.
But also, I'm terrible for that stuff. If I wasn't married, one, I'd be broke because I don't save money. That is 100% my wife.
I have the same affliction.
I would have a lot more guns. I would own a Kraken if I wasn't married. I've told Mike and Lucas that multiple times. Like, you will know when I get divorced because I will own an $8,000 rifle.
Yeah, I'll be in your store with my credit card going.
Yeah, I'll take one of those things now. But if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't want to come home and be like, oh yeah, I just worked 11 or 12 or 14 hours today. Now I want to take the dogs for a walk at minus 40.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that motivates a person, right? So how long have you been married for?
Good question. I think it's 13 years this year.
Okay. Wow, man.
Yeah, 12 or 13 years.
Yeah, we did 15 this year ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of it. Like, I think for young men especially, like, if you have like a quest for adventure and you're going after things, especially if there's hard things, there's nothing harder than the relationship.
Oh, 100%.
Right? And once you're finding something that's worth putting work into, I think relationships are the biggest one. And it doesn't matter whether it's your spouse or the people that you work with or your friend group or the people that you train with or anything like that. Like, if you're willing to work on relationships, they pay back.
Oh, 100%.
The biggest dividend.
Yeah.
Right? Is you do something for people, you're there for people, you're just not an asshole, or you're just trying not to be an asshole. That counts for a lot with people, I think. And you get a long way down the road that way. Yeah. And I think once people realize that in relationships, like dudes get married and they start seeing, oh, okay, like I was able to accomplish this on my own. And then now that I've met somebody else, us together are capable of more than 1 + 1. It's like, instead of I always say, like, God's math is crazy because, like, every other equation is 1 + 1 = 2, but when it comes to people, it's 1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah.
Right? Or 4 or 5 or 6 or a town or a city or a whole fucking civilization.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it doesn't stop, right? So you get that ability, and then a guy's motivations change, right? And you find another gear. Like, all of a sudden you're like, you wouldn't have been willing to work that hard if it was just you.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Right? You put somebody else who's depending on you, somebody else who you're putting, you're in it with them, and all of a sudden you're grabbing another gear, you're reaching another rung. All of a sudden your life has worth. You're like, oh, I'm not a worthless piece of shit. right? This person believes it. This person looks at me and sees something in me I don't see in myself.
Well, and opportunity too. Like my wife's really good because she is like my father-in-law is an accountant, and he has 3 daughters. So my wife and her 2 younger sisters are all phenomenal with money. Like I can't spend, if I push it a little bit too hard, red flags start going off. She goes, "Hey, what was this? And what was this? And what was this?" And if I can't justify everything, she's like, "Okay, we need to sit down and talk."
Yeah.
Like that was a little bit too much ammunition this month, or this and that. And she's not bitchy about it. It's real easy conversations. But if money starts disappearing, she's like, "Yeah, we've been down this rabbit hole before. It happened right after we got married."
Right.
Like once we had joint bank accounts.
How many bucks do you need?
Exactly.
Yep.
She's like, "How are you broke?" I'm like, "Well, I make money and then I spend it." She's like, "Save something."
Yeah.
Like there's got to be money for a raining day. But then when COVID hit, like we had moved out of town because she was like, "You can't put a farm kid in Grand Prairie." We were living in half a duplex on 68th.
Yeah.
And she's like, "You got to get me out of here." We lived in that house for 2.5 years. And then we bought this acreage. And we knew it needed a lot of work, but it was our forever home. We were never going to move. Like I have the hole where they're going to bury me. It's right next to the horse that I had to put down last year. It's like
the worst company, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, that was my 44 Magnum. And tie a horse to a fence post, and that was a life-changing experience. Yeah.
I have to edit that. No.
What are you gonna do?
It's acreage life.
Yeah,
you start
it is 100%, man.
You call your neighbor and
Death
go,
is
"Hey,
real.
can you bring me I need an 8-foot hole in the middle of winter. Can you do this?" He's like, "I'll be there in an hour."
Yeah, I'll get the backhoe.
Yeah. And it is what it is. But like if Deanna was into my life, I would be broke and alone. It's just it's an absolute science.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's amazing to see, and when 2 people make a go of it, and they really put their honest effort into it, and really trust each other, and it's you're gonna have differences in people, but when those differences become strengths, when it's like you're better at this than I am, and I'm better at this, but you do this and it kind of pisses me off, but it's actually a good thing.
Yeah.
Then once you get past all that superficial shit, you can kind of set aside the ego, see the broader picture. You end up in these situations where your life is better. Like I can't imagine, my life without my wife I'd probably be dead. Dead or in prison. But because, you get somebody in your life that changes that, gives you that extra gear, gives you that, oh, it's okay for, like, I'm allowed to dream a little bigger. And there was times when I had my job and she had her career, and she was kind of holding down just the day-to-day of things while I'm working my ass off, gone all the time. And then, when she wanted to change careers, start her own business, I was like, okay, I'll step up, I'll support you, whatever you need, we'll make sure it happens. And then, and then the ebb and flow, right? So now, she's got her thing cooking, and I'm like, okay, well, I want to try this over here, or maybe do this. And she's like, yeah, I'm in a secure place, I'll support you. And then you kind of you're leveling each other up over time.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't have kids, so we have a little bit more time and money to dispose on those kind of things. But I mean, when you build that and you start to build that family, that's the amazing part, man.
Yeah.
So,
well, and even now, like, I can't wait to see, like I said, girls are 5 and 7.
Yeah.
And they're already so much fun. And they're used to being outside because we have an acreage. Like, every once in a while, they'll get to sit down and watch a movie. And even if, like, we went all the way up to Northwest Territories last summer for our family holiday.
Nice.
We were 3 weeks, and those kids didn't touch a screen. They got coloring books, like, at different campgrounds and stuff.
Yeah.
And just looking out the windows. We'd stop and play. We'd pull over on the side of the highway. And, like, they have little pullouts out there where you can there's so much water up there when you start heading that far up north.
Yep.
And we just go fishing. We'd be driving around. We'd see a playground. Like, hey, let's go play in the swings for an hour. You're like, all right, let's do it. And now they're getting big enough to, like,
so is that something that you're taking from your growing up? That kind of road trip mentality? Are you trying to pass that on to your kids, those kind of experiences?
A little bit, but with...
Well, obviously not selling everything and driving, like, around North America.
Yeah.
But.
Well, by the time COVID hit, which I hate bringing up COVID as a timeline marker, but...
It was a major impact
a
thing in everyone's life, yeah.
By the time COVID hit, my wife had just got off maternity leave and couldn't go back to work. So she's like, we're buying a holiday trailer. All right.
Yeah.
can we afford a holiday trailer? She's like, yeah, there's money sitting in the bank. We're going to go out. We're going to buy a holiday trailer. We're going to travel. The kids are young. We probably have X amount of years. What they're going to think mom and dad are cool. We're going to drive as much as we can. So we bought a holiday trailer.
Beautiful, man.
And we've just been
Well, I can confirm when your kids are older that they won't think you're cool anymore.
No?
Well, it's
they're not going to want to hang
right?
out so much.
Actually,
it's natural.
I had to bring Piper in. She had a dentist appointment last week. It was the holiday. It was Monday. And we were going to stop at the gun store because I had something I needed to get from you. She's like, we're going to go see Lucas at the gun store. I'm like, yeah, we're going to go see Lucas at the gun store. We got there. The door was closed. And she's like, damn it.
Like, just super disappointed.
Well, they used to sell stuffed animals there.
Oh, yeah.
Just bust her out of school on any regular day and just bring her to the shop.
It'll happen one of these days. So, but no, and a lot of that is Deanna because like her parents, like she didn't grow up with a ton of money. So they would go camping. That was they'd go to Jasper every year or go to Canmore. Yeah. So we did that for years. We got married in Canmore. We always went through Canmore. That was our family getaway. Yeah. And we did that with the girls this time for the first time since I think we got married. Okay. So we have all the spots where we got our wedding photos taken. We now have family photos taken.
Oh, beautiful,
13 years later.
That's awesome.
So that was a really cool family trip this year. But that was when Jasper was on fire.
Yep.
So we had to redirect and we went through a different way home. Because, that was, we weren't sure if our summer vacation was going to get cut short because half of the province was on fire. I know that's your stomping grounds.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's cool that you get a chance to take your kids on those kind of adventures and you're kind of building those kind of memories. What's next for you? Like if you're taking stuff forward, if there's something that you could do with Marshall Controls, you said you have your own business. Like what's next on the plans other than finishing the kitchen?
Yeah, outside of that, honestly, I think we're at the point now, and I was talking to Davison about this the other day. It's getting to the point now where I'm worried that my kids won't be able to afford their house by the time they're adults.
Yeah.
So now we're looking at, okay, what's next? Like, we're comfortable. We still have a mortgage, and, we still have to work. But, I just hit 40, so it's like, okay, if I can retire in 25 years, what else can we acquire that'll make the kids' lives easier? Mm-hmm. What can we prepare for now? And you start getting into the prepper conversations. Like,
I think it's just common sense at this point, man. Alex really Jones was right way too much.
But it's like, how many things have to come true? Like, it really feels like every time I pay taxes on stuff and you can't see, like every time we're giving money away to things that, like, I really wish there was more transparency in
everything.
Like,
this is the fucking edge of the rabbit hole.
Yeah, and you want to talk about old man Orich getting angry? Like, I can see you twitching.
Feel my blood pressure rising right now.
But it's like, okay, so we're good. And I remember my mom having this conversation when my grandparents were getting older. My grandparents didn't want to spend money because they want to make sure they left their kids with something.
Yeah.
But their kids were already older. They were grown. They were at retirement age. And their grandkids were already set up. So, like, enjoy it while you have it. Like, be comfortable. Like, you guys, you don't have to worry about us.
I think that the best thing you can leave your kids, like, you grind it out, man. Like, you're always busy. You got lots of things to do. And you're always, you're entrepreneurial. You're not afraid to take risk. And that's probably the best gift you can give your kids. Fuck, they can, like, my parents, like, I didn't start life like, here's $20,000 in our RESP, or like, I didn't start with any of that. Everything I have is because I went out and earned it. And it's not that my parents weren't there to support me. It was like, they had to grind it out too. And I don't expect anything from them. Like, one of the greatest gifts you can give your children is the same attitude that, hey, if you want something in life, go out and make your way. Like, go and get it.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, it's, those lessons that you teach them, the tangible stuff, the hands-on and the experiences that you give yourself and your family. I mean, those are the things that pay dividends down the road, right?
Yeah.
It's those things that when they get out into the world, because everybody's out to sell a dream. And when you're 14, 15, 16 years old, you are buying dreams like a motherfucker. Yeah. And when you hit 19, 20, 21, all of a sudden you start realizing, like, all that cultural stuff, it's not really worth anything.
Yeah. And it's taxed at 65%.
Like, yeah. And those things that your dad showed you when you were 10, have value.
Yeah. Well, and my wife's really good. Like, she spends like this time of year, especially like she's canning, she's preserving, she's doing stuff. Yeah. The girls are baking, like they'll make muffins and put them in the freezer. So
those are like, hardcore life skills. Man.
It is. Yep. It's crazy. And honestly, that's the stuff I hate. I'm just like, no, I don't want to come home and peel beets and roast like roast vegetables and prep carrots and wash peas. Yeah. But my wife's so good at it and she's so diligent with it. I'm like, this sucks. She's like, yeah, but it will pay off. Yeah. So shut up and do it.
Yeah. And that's homesteading, man. That's the real deal. Yeah.
It's pretty darn close. And that's the stuff that she's implementing into our kids as well, where it's like, this is going to pay off 100-fold. So even if we don't have, like I said, I want them to be comfortable. Yeah. But
because like, I remember as a kid growing up, we'd all like in the fall, man, I just remember like, washing and chopping carrots and beans and all that shit until my fingers were fucking raw. I was like, well, like I just hated it. And now here I am. What am I doing? I'm making growing salsa. Shit. I'm chopping it. I'm preserving it. It's like
I grew up in a national park and I wasn't allowed to have a garden.
So, yeah. So.
We also grew up in an apartment. I didn't have a house or any land until I bought one.
Yeah. Well, our neighbors are doing chickens this year, and we brought the girls over, and we went over to their place this year for a pig roast. So like, Daddy, what's that? Like, that's a pig. That is a full pig.
The whole deal.
That's a lunch.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're not scared of that kind of stuff.
That's the thing too, is they learn the reality of life when you're living not in the city. You live in rural. Doesn't have to be on a farm. You can be on acreage, but if you have good community around you, people who are producing, by producers, they're growing stuff, they got animals, all that. Your kids are going to learn what life really is.
Yeah.
Right? It's not something they see on TV. It's something that's happening live right in front of them. And that's amazing. Like that, I don't think you can substitute that any other kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah. So if nothing else, like if I croak tomorrow and go, okay, here. Take what Dad taught you and carry on.
Well, it sounds like you're setting stuff up for success, man. Yeah. That's awesome.
Well, hopefully. And like I said, the holster business, I don't foresee that ever becoming, the next, that's not $1 million idea, but it's something that I enjoy doing. And, I like to think that I'm fairly good at it, and it's something that I'm going to keep plugging away on. And maybe that's what the girls, if they go, hey, this is, hey Dad, can I do the next one by myself when they're teenagers? Be like, sure.
Yeah.
You can sell that thing for $100.
Well, I mean, you're setting the level of expectation of what a man should be in their life, and I think that's the biggest thing you can do for daughters. Like, if you can set a standard, they won't accept less, and that's the best thing you can do.
That's been a big one in the last couple of years. Is now that they're getting older, like they'll see Deanna and I argue, and then they need to see Deanna and I reconcile our differences. Yeah, so we don't go off into the bedroom and fight. It's like, no, this is all happening right here. So, and we don't fight. Like, we're not throwing bottles.
It's a disagreement.
Yeah. But they'll be like, okay, this was this was that. And then even like just to sit them down and be like, hey, I got too angry. And I've done it before. Like, you're on your way to the school bus and my daughter's like, I forgot my glasses. You're like, shit, we are going to be late.
Yep.
And you throw the truck in reverse and you boot it back down the driveway. And I'm slamming doors and running around. She's like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. This was the last thing we needed. So this is my fault. This was not you. So for them to see someone be like, okay, that was a fuck up. I saw that was a fuck up. She's 7. But to be like, okay, this 40-year-old dude was just like, okay, that was a fuck up.
Lost his fucking mind.
That was.
But it's like that in every relationship. Like when you're wrong.
Yeah.
When you can swallow the ego and be like, okay, I was wrong.
Yeah.
Right. That
you know what though, it's a huge level of maturity to get to the point where you recognize, like, wait a minute, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Like
but it also shows like you've got somebody in your corner that makes sense with you, because like a lot of the time it's somebody who's going to see that you're kind of off your square a little bit, and they're going to poke that.
Yeah.
Right. They're going to prod that. They're going to bring that bad side out of you so they can get something over on you. Right. And those are those toxic relationships that kind of build. So when you're with somebody that isn't that way, somebody that's like, hey, like, are you okay? Or what's going on? Yeah. That's when you can seriously build, and you can have that moment of introspection. That person's giving you a gift.
Yeah.
Right. They're giving you that moment of introspection where you can kind of look at yourself and build on yourself and grow a little bit. Like, oh, okay, I'm being an asshole. Yeah. Not saying I'm never going to do it again, but I might do it less.
Yeah. Well, and we get that all the time too. Like she tells me, she's like, you're really bad at apologizing. I'm like, that justify an apology? She's like, if you hurt somebody, even if you don't think you're wrong, dummy. You owe them an apology. It's like, oh, I've heard this before.
Wait, I'm
like,
a dude.
Yeah. It's like, this isn't how this is normally goes. But it's like, okay, yeah, you're right. So it is good because, it's like you said, like there's things that I have to grow on because I have to be a role model, not even for my kids, but for what they're going to look for in a partner down the road. And to be a good partner for my wife. And just to be a better person for friends and family and everyone.
Yeah,
like
your life, you much like your home, right? You said you found your forever home. Yeah. Everybody's in their forever self, right?
Yeah.
So if like we're all works in progress.
Oh shit!
Right.
That's
some of us need more work than others.
A lot.
Cool, man.
But for now, we'll keep it to forming kydex and doing all that stuff. And like I said, we'll have to get out to the range one of these days.
Absolutely, man.
And I know a little place in the back alley that we can go and
we're gonna have to do like a gray range day.
We got to do it, man, because we got quite a few guests that we've had on. That
I think so. I think that's something that'll have to happen.
Well, and it's funny, like the guys I know from the shop that I'd cross paths with. Like just being out at, Ernie's place or, see at the range or like guys like Phil and you're just like, oh, hey, man, like guys that you could see at the range and then see on the mats. Like, it's a pretty tight knit and Grand Parade's like the perfect size.
It is.
Yeah. It's a big little town or it's a little big town.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's perfect for stuff like this. So
yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming, man.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Appreciate the conversation. It was a good time.
Yeah. No, likewise.
Unfortunately, I still don't have a new book. I'm waiting on my cover art.
It's coming
to happen. But what I do have is an entire stack of stuff that didn't make it in the book.
Oh shit! Are we going?
Yeah, we're gonna hit the B-sides here.
Nice.
Because these things may never see the light of day other than this moment right here.
Cool. Let's rip it.
Yeah, for sure. This is called The Always Fading Light. Divorced from consequences, we tried to learn to be on our own. Eschewing vital issues so overwhelming, all these emotions cut the lead, and we're alone. Never settled for mediocrity, that happy medium called suicide. A grand conflagration lights the night so we can see our way on the outside, burning our old selves to stay alive. We lost that bet. We laid it down. With each piece of hope and deft persuasion. It's a joke. Who's laughing now? Asked the question without hesitation, and the answer came. Are you really better off this way? Abdicating ever mortal virtue, trying to stick around, overstaying our welcome, missing that appointed time. We were all supposed to die and be somewhere else by now. Bodies entombed beneath the earth, abandoned of all purpose now. They start to wane and wonder how insane it is that we still try to blunder through all of this. We never looked around to see our neighbor's eyes, to read the pain between all our little lies, separated by generations, but we all just deny the consequence of being alive in this always fading light. That's it, folks. The party's over. Pack your shit, go home, smile at the neighbors, because we don't want to die alone. We're all we have. We are all one, and then we're gone.
God damn, it's another banger, folks. I don't know if I'm supposed to be sad or happy. Jesus.
And that one didn't make the cut, so what's in the book got to be awesome, right?
It's going to be wild.
Those are the leftovers from your first book?
That's the ones that didn't make the cut from the second book.
Yeah, like I said, I own a copy of your book. I forgot to bring it. Like I said, I keep it in the holiday trailer. It's the one time
if it ever makes its way to town.
Yeah.
He'll sign it. He might even have stickers, but I think I got all of them and handed them out. So
if you need more, just let me know.
Yeah, I do. So this part where you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Castbox. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Of course, you can follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook.
Yeah, and our new website, www.thegrayrange.com.
Where you can find every episode of the podcast. You can find the blog. Merch is coming soon. You can find there'll be shirts and a bunch of cool shit that we're working on. Just waiting on some artist type things, and those artists. People are fucking hard to deal with.
Yeah, even when you pay them, they're still slow.
Yeah, for sure, man. They're brutal.
Except Jeremy's lightning fast.
Brutal.
Absolutely, he's the best.
And then of course you'll be able to get the book there, and of course you can find the book on Amazon. The new book is coming out soon.
Yeah.
Title as yet still classified, undisclosed, and that's it, man.
All right,
cool. Well, thanks
a lot. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys.